Okay, we have seven of you. How is everybody? I know that Donna, I'm happy that you're here, even though I know I guess Donna's got a some sort of real estate deal thing happening right now, so she may have to jet out. I think Eleanor's at the beach, which, wonderful. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to this session. It's going to be kind of a fun session to talk about fun. And so we've got seven of you. I don't think I heard from anybody else. Any thoughts or questions? Well, let me say this. How is everybody that's here so far? Let's start there first. Yeah, it looks like you're trying to unmute yourself. Oh, okay. It looked like you were trying. Okay. Jenny, were you going to say something? You're unmuted. Okay.
Oh, I am unmuted.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to do that.
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
good though. Things are good. A lot of time in the yard this weekend, which felt really good.
Nice.
Recreation.
Therapeutic. Wonderful. Nope, there's two more. Perfect.
I was just going to say I downloaded Zoom, the real Zoom, and it is much better
Oh,
than
good. Okay.
going through the internet. And that's what I was doing. Wow, I can see everybody.
Yeah, every once in a while, technology oh, and I should say this. I went out for my walk and my semi run. I don't have a runner's body, but every once in a while, my body needs more intense exercise. And I've been doing that more lately, so I don't know what that means. I put this over here. And as I was coming back, there was an electric lines utility truck that had parked not too far away from in front of my house. And I thought, huh. And I asked them what they were doing today, and they said, oh, we're replacing some of the poles. And I'm thinking, and am I going to be losing electricity because I do teletherapy and I do coaching sessions? And they're like, oh, we don't really know. So it went out once. Luckily, I was on a phone session at the point. I think we're in the clear, but I just wanted to let you know that if for some reason I go dark for a minute, I will get back on as soon as I possibly can. Here comes Krista. Um, Luckily, these days, somehow they can change poles without clipping lines, which is just kind of very shocking to me that they can do that. But hopefully that blip in the system was all that we will experience today. So,
Did a fun pun there. It's
sorry,
shocking that they don't have to.
sorry, say it again.
You said it's shocking that they don't have to cut the lines. And I was like, oh, that's a fun pun.
And that one was completely unconscious.
I know.
That was a Freudian kind of thing, probably.
Oh.
Yeah, there were three people standing out there, and I was drenched. It is so humid here right now. I mean, and I had, like I said, I had run, and I was drenched in thinking, okay, these people probably don't even want to stand here talking to me, but my form of self-care. So one of my forms of self-care. So, okay, we've got 11 of you. So I think we are good to go, actually, I think. All right, so let's check in. How is everybody? My word that I use in therapy a lot of times is better, worse, same, or different. So are you better, worse, same, or different? It's a great question because it really does make you think. So I'm going to mark, not that I'm taking attendance, but I always mark off to see who's here. So anybody have anything they want to?
I'll start. I'll just say I'm the same, no big aha moments, but I just came back from 2 hours of pickleball for the first time ever, and that was kind of cool. So, I'm sweating. I just came off the court. So.
Good for you. That's fun. That's fun. Just be careful. I have a number of clients who have been injured from pickleball. So
That's what all the ladies I had three other ladies join me and teach me how to play. And I kind of learned as I was going, and they all said the same thing. And it didn't even occur to me that that was a dangerous sport.
yeah. Yeah, when games came out, people's thumbs were getting strained, and and they were getting like with the Wii Fit, they were getting like Wii elbow and all these different things. And I think the new thing is pickleball injuries. So just be mindful.
Yeah.
It's a great sport from what I hear. I haven't played it, but
Yeah, I've played tennis on and off during my life, but I'd never played pickleball, so I thought I'd give it a try. And it's sort of the new tennis, and
yeah.
uh, it's fun.
And it's very social. I just got
Yes.
text, so I want to make sure. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm not missing someone. Okay, so we've got one person who's going to be a little bit late. Okay. Yeah, so I do, it's very social. It's a thing now. So it's
And it's
just
recreational. It's appropriate for today,
it's
right?
very appropriate. It's very appropriate. And believe it or not, we're going to actually talk a lot about that. I have kind of some fun approaches. Hopefully, there's Jen. Fun approaches to um, one of my dogs. Speaking of fun, one of my dogs is looking at me like she really wants to go play. You okay? So, all right. So I want to touch base quickly on. Oh, okay. So you're not going to be able to see this. She's pawing me at the moment. So this is one of
Hmm.
my. Hey, baby girl. This is one of my joys, is to have my furry critters by me. Okay, so last session, the sexual health session was, that's a lot. That's a lot of information. And so I'm going to dive right in, and basically I'm going to share my screen and then we'll kind of jump in. And I'm going to try to do this better than I did last time because I had too many screens going on at the same time. Slideshow, come on. All right, so we are going to talk about the recreational branch. However, um, and by the way, there's a little bit more fun woven into this PowerPoint. So any thoughts, questions, reactions, anything left over from talking about the sexual branch of health? Because I know that was a lot. Or any questions? This little guy looks like he's asking questions, but anything else? Because there's a lot. And, I could probably do a very long video on, or a long webinar just on sexual health and both the human side and the soul side. But anything else come up for anybody?
Just my wish that like it would become normal in society for sex education, so to speak, to be broader than just male, female, number one, to be broader to expose people to that, but also broader to incorporate the pleasure part of it.
Yep.
I think when I reflect over my own life, like the pleasure part, nobody ever talked to me about.
Nope.
No one. And so that's something that you, or at least for me in my life experience, I just kind of had to pick up on cues about that. And I know that's also has a lot to do with people's culture. So that I just really have like some just wishes about how that would change, because I know when it came time for my own child to do quote unquote sex education through school, I didn't send her because I mean by age 5 and 6, my daughter was already reading all that stuff. We'd already been talking about it. And I didn't want her to be traumatized by just um this one class that's just going to talk about what happened or how someone gets pregnant.
Yeah,
Like,
this boxed version of basically,
yeah, so
okay,
so
check a
that's
box that we've talked about it and we're done. Yeah.
so that was my rationale for not sending her. And I mean, I ultimately let her make the decision, but we've been talking about this stuff for years.
Yeah.
But that's completely different than the culture I was raised in. So I've tried really hard to raise her, with thinking around personal pleasure, and you can do that yourself.
Yeah.
Like you can, like that's not something you have to wait till you have a partner with. So just trying to really just wishing things were different along those lines, especially for women, because I think for men it's, everywhere for them, but not necessarily for us.
Right. No, and I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate that. In fact, I don't even know what they teach in schools anymore. I mean, I know what we learned in the second and third grade, and it was basically, I remember, I don't remember what we talked about, but I remember them ushering us into the music room and it was all girls. They separated out the girls from the boys, had this like 2 hour session, and that was it. And then I think they might have had another one like a year later, but that was it. So I don't even know what they're doing in schools anymore. Does anybody know what they're doing in schools? Because I don't think anybody here is a teacher. So
I know that here in Florida, in Clay County, the approach is abstinence only. So there is no instruction. You cannot talk about sexuality, cannot talk about protection, or you can't. You just can't.
yeah,
They have a health course, um, but they don't have people to teach it. So, so yeah, the idea is just don't do it. Just don't have sex.
yeah,
Don't. And
yeah,
then like you're just supposed to know what to do when you're an adult.
yeah. And also then know what to do when you get pregnant or you get an STD,
Yes.
or even know that you have an STD. That's
Yeah.
the other part of it. And
So, I mean, little side note here, I actually had a student, 17, and she was tested positive for chlamydia. Um, and her boyfriend went and got tested again, and yep, it was from him. And so like they almost they kind of had to do this whole like, hey, if you've been with me, you might want to go get tested. And we live in a very small town with a small school, and so it was uncomfortable for a lot of people.
mhm.
But my client was very lighthearted and silly about it. She goes, "Oh my God, Keystone's like the chlamydia farm." And I'm like, "Ew, let's not go there. That sounds really gross."
But it's good that she could be lighthearted about it. And
Yes,
it's good that
yes.
she had you to talk to about it
Mhm.
because, I can't tell you the number of conversations I've had with clients about sex because they have nobody else they can talk to. And I'm
Yeah,
talking about like middle-aged and above men as well as women. So this is not just like, intimate details with a female who is a client. This is like, I hear a lot about, I've got a handful of male clients. And a lot of times they're talking to me about it because they don't know where else to talk. So,
yeah, yeah.
but yeah, there are lots of things I wish, especially after, especially after working for student health promotion and like helping sorority students and fraternity students and just the general campus understand more about sexuality and health. And then working for Heartland Care Center, the HIV and AIDS testing and counseling center. It's like, I just wish, oops, there's Eleanor. Oh, she must have popped out accidentally. I just wish more people, again, like you said, Krista, that it wasn't such a couple things. I wish it wasn't such a canned topic that you only get X number of checkpoints of the conversation you have. And I also wish it was just a conversation that was much more open because I think that's why a lot of people do struggle with the sexual branch of health because either they've had really terrible experiences, but they don't know who to talk to about it. Um, I've had people who they don't even realize they've been raped, and yet I've had to have those conversations, help them define what has happened, as well as just general like sex ed for what you do to take care of yourself, from condom perspective or, I mean, there's all kinds of different things. So I very much agree with you, Krista, and I don't know how to change that, especially given our current administration. I think that is going to make it much harder, much harder. So anybody else have any thoughts or um, any other thoughts, comments, or reactions from the sexual branch of health information that we talked about?
A couple things came up for me. Um, Also, just realizing how we're still in this just backward struggle to realize like what it even is, like sexual assault trauma, like that it's, if it's not full out rape, then it's not such a big deal. Like even in some of the conversations I've had since last Tuesday, it's mind blowing to me that that's still like in people's minds of like, is it, I mean, is it really true? Is it really true that, you know, all of this trauma exists? I mean, if it's not full out rape, then what is it? And it's mind blowing to me that that's still like in our psyches.
Yeah.
Um, and then in my own personal experience, how it's not, how it goes so far beyond even like the act of sex, of like, you know, I've been told recently that I've lived a very masculine life, and um, coming into my motherhood, I'm like, what even is feminine? You know, and like I have very small boobs, and like how that's like brought in like a lot of preconceived notions going into nursing my child, and how I'm surrounded by lots of big boobed women nursing their children all over me, and I'm like, fuck you, you know, like all of my own little judgments coming
Yeah.
out, um, of like, yeah, what it means to be even feminine, or like how it's all wrapped up, you know, in odd ways. And I remember hearing a Glennon Doyle interview about like her even noticing like her daughter's shampoo bottle versus her son's shampoo bottle, and like the vernacular of like her son's was like destroy body odor, and her girls was like more whimsical and like dust yourself in the essence of whatever, just how it's just, it's insidious
Yeah.
how we're educating our youth, and how we're living through it.
Yeah. Yes. And, you know, and again, I introduced some of the soul side of this too. You know, you said that you've been told you've lived masculine lives. And, you know, that does play a part from a soul perspective, because if you've been a male in previous lifetimes, depending on the number of times, you know, you may actually come into this lifetime with some masculine type sexual needs as well. So, I mean, you just kind of have to, I can tell you that the physicians I taught in medical school wouldn't have a clue where to go with that. But I think from, you know, understanding the soul healing aspect of that, you know, that's just part of it, you know, and to me, it is just part of it. So, yes, it's a layered topic that out of all of the branches, it's the one that's like in the public, it's not talked about. And I just think from a health perspective, anybody who works in health education, health provision, we should we should be able to talk about it. And we're just not taught. I'm curious, Yetta, when you're training as a nurse, and maybe you said this last week, did you have any training about sexual health?
Yeah, we do. Um, but in thinking about that, I was 19 years old when I became a registered nurse, and my very first patient was a male that had a penile implant. Um,
There you
yeah,
go.
yeah. So I got initiated really well, but we also probably have a very different view of sex and sexuality because we are exposed to so many body parts all the time. But I mean, for me, a penis is a penis is a penis. It's about the rest of it goes on with it. It's just
Right.
not, we're all kind of built the same, which is funny when Jenny was talking about male past lives. I've been told many times I've had many male past lives. I have the bigger boobs and I've spent my whole life trying to hide them. You know, it's like I would give anything not to have so much boobs, but you know,
Mhm.
it's just a, and I don't know why that is. If I've been a male, you'd think I'd just love having them, but I don't.
Funny.
um, but yeah, we're taught a lot about it, and my poor children, because my ex-husband was a PA, and I'm a nurse. My poor son, when he turned about 12, Mike took him to the basement and pulled out a poster of sexually transmitted diseases, actual pictures. And Eric was just like, "Woo, I'm gonna faint and fall over." But I think it worked.
Yep.
So very different, yes, very different. I was thinking too about. I was sitting here doing the math. Back when I would have gone through sex education, like I don't think we got any sex education till seventh or eighth grade. And according to your age numbers last week, that you missed the
Too
boat on
late.
that
15 years
conversation.
late. Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's interesting.
Yep. Yeah, and so, you know, it's um again, so many layers, so many things to think about, so many reflections, which I'm really glad that you're doing the reflection work on your own life, because again, that's why I wanted to do this course as more of a journey piece is, okay, how do you really understand yourself and your soul if you don't understand each one of these branches and how, things have gone for you? It's kind of interesting for me because, well, lots of this is interesting for me in many ways, but it's that whole idea of where is it that we became, at least most of society has become so shy in talking about it when ancient cultures actually kind of talk about it all the time. I mean, if you ever travel to certain countries, especially in South America, there are phallic symbol statues everywhere. Everywhere. I mean, Peru, there are phallic symbols everywhere. In Nepal and Bhutan, phallic symbols everywhere. So there's also symbolism in ancient culture, and this is ancient spiritual culture. This isn't just ancient culture. This is sacred culture that really feminine energy, feminine parts, physical parts, all of that was actually integrated into the spirituality. So I think what's fascinating is that, again, it's like separation of church and state. It's like, ooh, separation of, sexuality and state for the most part. So it's very curious to me how separated we've become from all of this. I know when I went to Peru for the first time, and there are literally phallic symbols like everywhere, and in their markets they have little statues you can buy of just phallic symbols. And then when I went to Bhutan and Nepal right before the pandemic, I it just didn't register that I'd see them there too, but they're everywhere there too. So it's fascinating, but it's like, how did we become separate from the sexuality piece? But again, that's probably the same question or similar question is, how did we become so separated from our souls? I think it's part of this devolution process, and hopefully we will evolve back into integrating into whole person health again. And if I have my way, we will, but who knows? I'm 55. I don't know if I have enough time in my life to be able to really change how a lot of people see this. So, any other comments before we go on? So I know this is noteworthy information.
Real quick, that just made me think of like, if you think about phallic symbols, they're all over our culture too. We've just masked them in this Puritan way where we don't acknowledge that the monument is a big penis, but it's like, again, that's like kind of the gaslighting of our Puritan American culture in a lot of ways, that it is in our face, but we're not willing to acknowledge it. But it's the undercurrent.
It's so funny that you say that, because anybody who has been to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, knows that the Wachovia building, the old Wachovia building that used to be a bank, looks exactly like a penis. It is the tallest building in downtown Winston-Salem, and for a reason, because the person who built it basically wanted it that way. And there are two strategic places, either coming from the west or coming from the east, where you hit a curve and it's like, oh, it's right there. And it makes me laugh. It makes me laugh. Anybody who visited me in my early time living here, I'd be like, okay, now watch down the road as we're turning this corner. And they'd be like, what in the world? So it's everywhere. But what's interesting, like you said, is it's mostly the masculine parts. Where do you see the feminine parts? And I know when Georgia O'Keeffe became such a famous artist, everybody was like, oh my God, I can't believe she's painting these things. And yet, it was such an interesting disparity. So I do think you're making a really good point. And masculine energy is all over the news right now. So it's just this interesting dynamic. So
I think the last thing I just want to say, and I appreciate that we can have this honest dialogue about this, like where else can I talk like this, right? I think for me too is my experiment with my own child has been, I want her to value and respect her own parts. Therefore, she'll protect them and take care of them. that's been my thought, because that's not at all anything I was ever taught.
Mhm.
You know, we're taught condoms and this and whatever's and that, but
Mhm.
it's all about to prevent pregnancy, not even the deeper meaning of you protect your whole self, you know, from disease and all this other stuff. So again, I think it kind of, for me, it kind of goes to self-worth again.
Yeah.
Like, am I worth you know, knowing what I want, when I want it, and how I want it, right? And then am I also equipped to know how to protect myself when I'm having this kind of fun? So I think, again, like, you know, I don't know, I will share this with the group and you can laugh with me. My daughter's 14. When she was 12, so maybe I've overdone it, she asked me for her own vibrator. I did not get it for her. And we had some conversation that we could revisit that when she was older. But I did have to run into the other room and laugh. I thought, okay, well, am I overdoing it? I don't know. You know, that's up for debate. My child is a very old soul as well.
Yeah.
But I thought it was funny because she, of course, has, you know, been nosy and gone through my stuff and, you know, seen some of my stuff, even though it was under lock and key. So again, it's just kind of like when she asked me that, I didn't know what to say.
Right.
I said,
Right.
we'll talk about that request when you're older. And I went to the next room and just had to shut the door. I thought, my God, who do I call to ask that question to?
Well, and see, this is where I think it is the blessing and the challenge of just being transparent, because the more transparent you are, the more questions they have. The more questions they have, the more curious they are. But is that a bad thing? Is that not a bad thing? And so again, I think it is it's a conundrum, meaning, I think you have to align with yourself and see, this is where, next week is all about self-love and really understanding how that integrates into every one of these branches. And so that self-worth, that self-esteem is so aligned with what a woman or a man does with their body and who they share it with. And women in general, like I said before, historically have been abused and used and mistreated and because of sexuality. And so how do you find that balance between empowering yourself to be who you are as a sexual being, and at the same time, like you said, Krista, know how to protect yourself and know what those boundaries are, because there still will be people who will try to take advantage of that. So it's such a, and the whole idea of power and sex, that's the other thing, is that we could go into a very long conversation about how people use sex for power, and how, and both male and female, souls do this, but at the same time, how males try to take power by forcing sex. So, I mean, there's so many different layers. And so I'm actually really appreciative of all of your conversation about this, because as people who are going to be doing some form of soul healing, I think it's really going to be important to go, oh, this could be an element that I may need to coach someone through or talk someone through. So I'm glad that, and again, I appreciate your openness with this as well.
Hey, Krista, just so you're not standing alone, I bought my daughter her first at 17. So, and then I found out she was having sex, which was very hard for a mom to hear that. But then I was like ridiculed by some people that's like, oh, you go bought her vibrator, that's why she's having sex. I was like, no, that's not the connection. That's not how that works. I bought her the vibrator so she could be more comfortable with her body and know what she wants before she has sex, or if she is having sex, what she likes.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
So anyway, I just
No,
didn't want you to stand alone on that.
I thank you. I appreciate that, because my background's child welfare, and I'm thinking, you know, in 2 seconds after she asked me, I'm thinking, oh my God, if I were to say yes, somebody might make a report. I mean, you just don't ever know. Like, I don't want, but yeah, I mean, she was obviously too young in my opinion, but I did appreciate that she even asked.
Mhm.
Right? Because like my mom would try to talk about this stuff and I would run and hide because she made it so icky.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you got to count a win when it's a win, I guess.
Right. Right. Well, and the other thing I want to say about the requests at the end of the session last time of, wow, if I ever do another webinar, people want to know about it. I appreciate those requests because it helps me know what people need. And this, like you said, this is one of the few places you could probably talk about it, but talk about it from a soulful perspective. And, that's why, even in the book and in these modules, I've really added that whole idea of what is soulful sex, because again, like, Krista said, a lot of times, you're taught about how to prevent pregnancy, not how to enjoy through pleasure. You don't even know what soulful sex is, but it's a really important part of this. And, um, and what is intimacy? People don't even know that there's intimacy beyond sex. So, I mean, it's there's so many different layers of, I think, what could be involved. So I appreciate, again, the added interest. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else want to say anything?
I think one thing that bothers me a little bit is how much emphasis is put on sex in relationships. I mean, if sex isn't going well, then the relationship's in the shit basket, according to a lot of people. And that's just so, I mean, you can be having great sex and still not communicating about anything else in life or feeling close to somebody or whatever. I just wish there was more balance in the conversations when it's being talked about, because you know, I guess a lot of times people say, well, it's honeymoons first and sex is great, and then it all dies off. Well, I mean, there's some elements to that, but the rest, there's so much more to a relationship than that piece of it. And that's what bothers me. That especially kids understanding that there's more than one piece that's important in this relationship.
Yeah. And I agree with that. And, I have it in my mind when in all of my spare time to actually write a book about soul health for couples. Mara's coming back in. Because I think part of this is, I literally just got up, well, not literally, it was my client ended at 4 or 3, but he's my male who basically, he's married again, but he was out there dating and not protecting himself. And now I'm talking to him about intimate conversation with his wife because they've been married and yet they don't know how to communicate really well. And so it's like the whole soulful part of it. It's like, how do we get soul health for couples out there? So that's one of my next missions. And then the next one is like, parenting from a soul health perspective. And, if I had more time in my life, I'd have all these books done. But yeah, so I totally agree with you, Yetta. And I think that's where even my couple or my client that I told you about last week, that they've been married for 20 some years and have never they've never consummated. And, I've asked her, do you see yourself leaving? No, but she still regrets for her not having sex. But I think it's more because she's curious about what it would be like. I don't think it's, that it would be some fantastic thing necessarily, but I think for her, again, sex is not the biggest part of the relationship. So she's best friends with him. So it's like, it's just one of those things. So there, we do have a warped idea of what sex is, but also what relationships are in general. Yeah, Krista.
I agree with everything y'all are saying. And I want us all to also consider, I think, at least for me, I think I've learned over 2 divorces, dated men and women, whatever, that I think for me, it's also been a journey to figure out in my relationship, what do I want and need? And that's going to be different, perhaps, than everybody else.
Yep.
And so for me, if sex is like number 1, that's okay.
Yeah. Because
I think that, at least for me, I have figured out that is like not just a love language, but I mean, I can't even, I'm not even gonna get into all of it. Anyway, it's just really important to me. And I think that there's other things in a relationship that used to be that are not anymore because I've grown more to provide whatever that is for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the other thing I think that makes this so fun and yet so complicated It's how do you just like reach out to someone and whatever their wishes, whatever their soul says is like perfect for them. I've got some asexual friends that are in relationships that have never, one of them's been together 30 something years, never had sex. I cannot fathom that, but I don't have to. They are happy and they've been happier than any other couple I've ever seen, which blows my mind. But that's how they're made, I guess. So it really is fun to kind of stop and think about all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
that's the exact point of soul health, is that there's 8.6 billion people on this planet, which means there's 8.6 billion different trees. And the challenge is finding, if you want a partnership or a boyfriend or a girlfriend, finding someone whose tree matches enough with your tree. Oh, Carol, coming back in. People must be dropping today. But that you find a partner or someone that you can quote play with that has similar interests or needs. Now, granted, the other thing is sometimes those dissimilarities are part of the soul health, soul evolution process. So you've got so many different angles of this. So absolutely. And I appreciate all of your comments, because this wouldn't be a big topic unless it was needed. I just, I laugh that people don't talk about it more, but I understand it because it's so uncomfortable and people don't know where to start. So, yeah. Okay. All right. Anything else? Okay, so I'm going to move this over a little bit. All right, so we're going to have some fun. So does everybody have paper and a pen by them? I'm going to give you a minute to get paper and a pen. And for the first time, I'm going to put you on a timer. And that's purposeful. So paper and pen or pencil, whatever. I'm going to wait for Jen to get back because I see a vacant seat. So I think she's getting a notebook. There we go. All right. All right. And I think Eleanor's at the beach, so she may not be able to jump in on this. So, okay. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to, I'm going to put you on a timeline here. So you got to think quick on this. And there's going to be a few questions, about 4 or 5 questions I'm going to ask, and I just want you to write, and I'm going to give you 1 minute. Now, I might actually stretch that to about 1.5 to 2 minutes, but the reason I'm pressing this is I want you to really think through this, okay? So the first question, get this to drop down. Why is this not dropping? I have to be careful. It didn't do what it was supposed to do. Okay, so what I want you to do first is you have 1 minute to list 10 things you do for fun. Go. I'm going to put my timer on my phone. You have 26 seconds. Okay, stop. Next question. Oh, my little timer went off. Okay, next question. You have 1 minute to answer if you were to create a list of 10 things you do for leisure. giving just a few more seconds on this one. Next one. Make a list of 10 things you do for life balance. For 20 seconds. Okay, the next one. Write in 1 minute, list your beliefs about fun and leisure. So what are your beliefs about it? You have 5 seconds. Okay. All right. So how hard was that for you to answer the first one about what do you do for fun?
I remember being asked this question shortly after maybe both kids went to college, if not at least one of them. And I didn't know how to answer it because I didn't know. Like my kids are 22 and 20, and those 22 years I guess probably 20 revolved around what they were doing for fun and spectating what they wanted to do for fun. And I loved that role, but I didn't have a great answer for that. Other than live music. That's been a consistent thing I always made time to participate in. But so I've really had to I'm not super playful because it's just not something I've done in a really long time. So I've had to try to focus on that more. Now, it's a terrible thing to focus on right now because I've just gone back to school. So there's not as much time for fun as there would be if I wasn't a little off balance by choice. But it was a hard thing for me. Everything I named when I was asked was what my kids did for fun. So
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
had to kind of work through that. Obviously I figured that out, but it was a very eye-opening question. I didn't have good answers. So I'm
Mhm.
working on that now.
So how many were you able to list now?
I have 10. I
Okay,
had
perfect.
10. Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. Okay, what about others?
Listing my fun stuff is easy. That fun comes easy to me. It's the leisure and balance that I struggle with.
Okay. Okay.
So one
Okay.
of my, like on the beliefs part of it, I really, really try to combine those type of things because I don't balance or leisure enough. Then
Mhm.
I try to combine that with, work can be leisurely, in a way, or I try to combine them.
Perfect. Yep. Perfect. Well, and so how many of you have started watching the Recipe for Radiance videos so far? So I've got one,
I
only one.
finished it.
You finished it already. Good for you. Wonderful. Well, and so that is actually one of the reasons, and it's kind of timely, really, that I did that video or that it released at the time that it did. So when you're ready, it will help you. But that is one of the things I teach in this webinar is the difference between self-care and soul care, and that soul care really is something you can integrate into anything you do. And it's just as restorative, but people don't know the language, they don't know where to start, and they don't know, they don't even know how to create, quote, this recipe, which is exactly why I did this. So when you get to it, you will have a little bit more education about that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that today. What about others? How was this for you to come up with have 1 minute to come up with a list of 10 things?
I found it confusing to kind of parse out leisure versus fun, because I think there's some overlap there. And so that was a little confusing about, distinguishing between them.
Yes. Anybody else have that difficulty?
I just, some of mine would fit under fun and leisure. Both. But I don't think they're mutually exclusive necessarily.
They're not exclusive. Sorry, I'm just seeing it. Yeah, so Eleanor said same. I just saw a chat pop up. Yes, they're not the same, but they're not unrelated.
So how I think about this is my idea of fun is pretty low key. Like I don't go hiking, I don't go scuba diving, I'm not gonna go whitewater rafting. Like, not really my fun. Maybe an adventure, but uh, and that definitely wouldn't be leisure, at least for me.
Sure.
So for in my point of view, fun um is closer to those activities of more like extreme sports. And then leisure is closer to crocheting and reading.
Mhm.
At least that's how I kind of separate
Yeah.
the idea between fun and leisure.
So, and what about others? And then I'll kind of give my differentiation.
I think for me, fun is I'm going to probably be laughing, enjoying myself with others, it's just lighthearted and it's not so much exercise. Could include that. Could be laughing while I'm on a rafting trip. But for me, leisure is about, I love to just lay on the grass and look at the sky and try to figure out what the clouds look like. And that's just relaxing and peace, more than it is. They both bring me joy. But I'm not going to sit there and laugh so much when I'm looking at the clouds. I'm probably going to be more internally thoughtful and just, or cooking or something if I'm doing it by myself. I don't know.
I find leisure to be more relaxing and maybe I don't know, maybe fun could be reduce stress, but definitely leisure seems to maybe bring those cortisol levels down. To me, it seems anyway. That's what fun seems more elevated and bigger and louder, and leisure seems more calm to me. But that's maybe just me.
Okay. Who else? Anybody, any other thoughts or comments? Yeah, Mara?
I felt like my leisure and my life balance ones were almost not like identical, but there was the most overlap there. And there's definitely overlap between fun and leisure. Um, but yeah, I was like a little confused. I was like, do I need more things or are those multitaskers? I don't know.
As adults, we all need more of either fun or leisure in general, but that's the thing. And so, yeah, and thank you. Thank you for, all of you sharing your confusion as well. What about other people? Anybody else have comments about these things?
What's coming to mind for me is fun is like when I'm on, and leisure is when I can turn off.
That's a nice way to talk about it. Yeah, that's a nice way to explain it. Absolutely. Yeah, I like that.
For me, it's kind of the opposite. Fun is the things that I can just relax and do without having to think about it. And leisure is something that, things that interest me, like studying world religion and, exploring different topics on YouTube and, things like that. Reading historical novels versus reading fantasy, that's
Yeah.
fun,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And see, I love the fact that everybody can define it differently for themselves because of that. Again, if there's 8.6 billion people on the planet, there's going to be 8.6 different ways to exploiting or explore what fun and leisure are. And so I'm gonna add to this question, the fun question for a second. When you think back to childhood, what was fun for you then, and how did you know you were having fun?
Oh my God, the ice cream truck for sure.
That sounds lovely. Yes, I
It's still
actually remember.
fun. That's still
Yeah.
on my fun list, is to treat myself to ice cream.
Yeah, there's a winery that's going to have an ice cream truck at it 2 Saturdays from now. So I'm thinking, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, not together. I'm not. It's just the thought of the ice cream truck in the warm sun. It's not so much them together.
Yeah.
What about others? When you were kids, what was fun?
More on like asking like how did you know or how did you define young at or
How did
fun
you know
at
you
a
were having
young
fun?
age?
Yeah.
Um, I I think it boiled as an adult looking back, it boils more down to you didn't know you were doing something. It just was like a natural, well, like I don't remember where I saw it, I read it. The natural state of the soul is joy and
Joy and
content.
contentment.
So, that feeling as a kid means I was having fun because I wasn't, you didn't have to think about it. You were just
Yeah.
living.
Yeah. Yeah. So fun, usually when we were kids, there was no purpose to it. There was no, other than having fun, there was no purpose. And that's how I try to explain it when I'm trying to help an adult understand fun, is that there's really no purpose to what you're doing other than to feel good, like to have fun. Like you're not having to accomplish something, or there's no competition involved. Um, there's no to-do list that's involved necessarily. Now, I'm gonna shift that in a second, but when we were kids, that's kind of what things were like. We looked for ways to laugh. We looked for ways to have fun. We were creative automatically. We made up games. We made up imaginary friends, or not so imaginary friends for some of us. We just that whole creativity, making up games. How many of you made up games when you were kids? Yeah, so it's like part of that. Okay, how that's part of that fun piece. What about others? Anybody else when when you were a kid? What was fun for you?
Playing with dolls with my little sister.
Okay, yeah,
We had great imaginative play with our doll houses, and we were less than 2 years apart, so we did all kinds of cool stuff together with that.
nice, nice. Yeah,
I grew up in the mountains, and so we were always creating, but we were creating outside in the woods. I don't know how we all made it out just fine, but I don't know what we were doing, what we were creating, but we go get lost in the woods, which whenever you talk about trees, I always think about. But I mean, there was a lot of imaginative play that I don't even think we realized we were really engaging in imaginative play at the time. Because I'll tell you, I didn't play like that, but I really did. And but we were always outside. It was super safe, so we were always just roaming through the woods to see what imaginary space we could create with the same sticks and branches and stumps that we there was a whole different thing the next day. So
yep,
um that's what we did.
yep, yep.
I was the same. And so I thought that was interesting that I put that on my fun and leisure actually was exploring.
Hmm.
So that's what we did all day. We left the house early in the morning, didn't come home till late at night. I don't think my parents knew most of what we did. came home when the street lights came on.
Mhm.
But we would go swimming in farm ponds. We would catch salamanders. One time we caught a giant snapping turtle in a creek. Like, our parents had no idea, but we were so proud. Like, I
Mhm.
remember wheeling that thing like at least a mile home. It was giant. And so I
Without
still
losing a
love,
finger, that's pretty good with a snapping turtle.
yeah. Well, we had like it was so big, and we had a stick that we'd like keep by it so that it didn't. I had to even be before I was in. Had to be around middle school age because high school I was so active in sports and then working, of course. But I appreciated that I had that on my list now. And then I was thinking through it. The kids at school that I go to, it's on like a large, they go to, is on a large acreage. And when they run cross country or different things, they actually run through a forest that has a creek. And I love that for them. And I think I just made that connection of
Mhm.
like how much I love to explore and how much we just explore in the mountains or just wherever. But I love that for them in their school environment that they get to explore and have that same, similar experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Nice. Thank you.
I have two boy cousins. One is just like 3 months older than me, and the other one's like a year younger than me. And we would just hang out all the time, all the time. And half the time I couldn't tell you what we did. Um, I remember one thing we would gather like leaves and twigs and dirt, and we would create these things and try to sell them. I don't know who we were selling it to, but
Mhm.
we even like set up a booth or whatever. And we used to make forts out of cardboard boxes. And we
Mhm.
were so determined to stay the night in them and we're like, we're going to sleep here tonight. This is what we're doing. And it would get dusk and we're like, yeah, we're going home. Bye. Never mind, it's scary.
Or bugs.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And so, it's interesting, even when I was, creating this PowerPoint and kind of doing some of the materials, you have these flashbacks when you ask these questions. And, I had fun in the kitchen with my mom. She taught me the basics of cooking. And so I have this picture of myself that I don't even know who took it, but I was literally had my little sleeves pushed up to my elbows. I was probably 2 years old and I'm standing at the sink with my arms mixing something in a bowl. I have no idea what it was. That was fun for me. And I can look through my life and look at all of the fun things that were creative. And I think that is one thing that has been a steady for all of my life is that anytime I'm creating, I'm having fun. And that's even now. I mean, creating these and the certification has been fun. Creating the Recipe for Radiance webinar was a lot of fun for those of you who look at the pictures, because they were fun pictures. I had a lot of fun with that. But it's this idea of, then we start to change as we get older. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But that whole idea of fun and how we can instill that in our lives now, because fun is the salve for the soul. And when we have to be serious, when there's so much life going on that we can barely even breathe, let alone, restore, fun or leisure and the lightheartedness is a big part of what bolsters us and brings us back up. So I think it was ironic but funny at the same time that this was the last branch that I added, given that, I had said all along that this was going to be like my first book that I wrote was how to teach adults to play again. And yet, I look at my own life and having a father who had an accident when I was 9, that really was when fun stopped in my household. I mean, it wasn't fun for the sake of fun anymore. It was, really being in kind of a sick household and having to tiptoe around, not make noise. And so it was a very different change to kind of what I had been used to in the first 9 years. And yet, now people think I probably lead a very serious life, and in my daytime I do, but I do a lot to have fun. And so, I think this is why, to me, it's so important for us to really think through, gosh, what was it that I used to do? What can I bring back? What can I resurrect or revitalize in my life to bring into now? And am I actively doing things for both fun and leisure that are going to help to restore me? And so I think it is kind of an interesting thing. So I am going to differentiate fun and leisure a little bit because I think fun is basically, actually, both of them do decrease cortisol levels very, very nicely. Both of them actually, well, fun boosts serotonin faster than leisure does from a biological perspective. Fun also boosts things like endorphins and some of the other happy chemicals in our systems. But what's really interesting is both of them obviously are good for our health. The research is extremely clear that whether it's fun or whether it is leisure, that our souls need this to sustain. And, I think about what's happening in our country and in our world right now. There's this heightened level of stress, for us in general for multiple reasons. But it's like when we have that heightened level of stress, sometimes we forget to have the fun part when we are busy. I know a couple of you have, if you haven't started your programs now, you're about to engage in more busyness. But we forget to have fun when we're worn out. We forget to have, well, we oftentimes don't have the time for leisure when we're worn out. So this branch, again, is a really important kind of thing to think about. And on my intake form, I literally have, what do you do? What do you do for fun? What do you take care of yourself? Because I'm curious, do people even know what that is? And are they willing to go there? Because it's highly usual for me to say, hey, your assignment is to come back with a list of 10 things that are fun for you. And 9 times out of 10, people cannot come up with a full list of 10. So I'm actually very impressed that most of you could come up with that list of 10 because it's not that typical. It's not that common. So when it comes for leisure, it is more of a relaxing kind of approach because leisure is more, again, the slower pace, doing things a little more intentionally because you need to restore in a different way. And so these kinds of things tend to be, again, it's an overlap, but these things tend to be the reading the book under the canopy of the trees or laying on that grass looking up. It could be sitting there watching a video or to me, again, I love documentaries. It doesn't sound fun, but it's fascinating for me. Learning and growing and figuring out what it is that leisure piece is for you is a really important part. The life balance part. So how many of you struggled with that? So there are a few of you actually, let me go up. So there are a couple of you that raised your hands. 3 or 4. Okay. So tell me a little bit, when you thought about the question of balance, what went through your minds?
Well, I'm in school, so it's very new and it's a lot. So it's not, I'm just very aware of it, and I'm certainly going to try to get it a little bit more balanced as I proceed. But so it was maybe not fair to myself to assess just quite yet because I've done one class, but um, I'm spending way too much time working. But it's okay. I signed up for that, so we're working to. But I have still had fun and while doing class. I'm very purposeful to not work all the time and take time for myself and do all the mindfulness activities. And I have had fun. I've been on a trip. So it's okay. Don't worry about me too much. I'm doing just fine, but I know it's not quite balanced. It's not, it'll be better I will feel better when it's more balanced, but I'm just not quite there yet. But I'll get there.
Yeah. Well, and again, that's how the human condition is. It just ebbs and flows. So there are times when we are super busy and we don't know how to breathe. And there's times when we have more space for ourselves to create those, experiences. So yeah, the whole idea of balance can be a little bit more challenging for people. Who else had a comment?
I know for me, it's always the mindset I was raised in is that you only have fun when your work is done. You don't get to play first. You don't get to,
Mhm.
well, my work is never done. If you think about work and family and all those things,
Mhm.
And so it's been really hard for me to change my mind around that
Mhm.
until I was able to realize that when I do take a break or do go have some fun, it energizes me so I can then get my stuff done more quickly.
Mhm.
But I've really had to make myself do that so I can experience that. For me, that's actually how it works.
Yeah.
Um, and that's hard, and it's a cultural thing. I mean, my dad, even as a kid, he was raised on a farm. If my grandmother heard him dribbling the basketball, then she would go out to where his basketball goal was and find him a chore to do.
Mhm.
So he learned how to shoot baskets without it hitting the ground. I mean, it's that sick. So, like, this is deep within my family, and that's how I was raised too. You just don't, you have to have all of your stuff done. Well,
Is it ever always done? Yeah,
as a
exactly.
kid, that might be possible at some point, but as an adult, it doesn't seem likely.
Yeah. Well, and you also hit the point of, well, and I'm going to extend the point of knowing when fun or leisure will help balance out your life. Because the thing is, it's like, and that's how you start to clue into, whoa, I am not going to get this done well if I don't take a break, or if I don't just completely get out of my head and go do something lighthearted or fun, I'm not going to think through this well. So it's an art to be basically being able to tune in and go, I need to tune out right now. So, and we're going to again talk about these beliefs that we end up having because of our upbringings of, is it okay for us to have fun? Is it okay for us to have leisure? Is it okay as a male or a female? And, males are trained to go play golf or to go do whatever they want to do, whereas women are home taking care of the kids or the chores or the groceries or whatever. And so women have more of a guilt in taking care of themselves. And so this in the fun and leisure kind of way. So it is kind of interesting. Yeah.
Talking about women staying home or taking care of the kids, I actually, during motherhood, I found it enjoyable to go grocery shopping. Like it was fun. I got to spend some money, and I don't know, I was out of the house. It was like I have to go grocery shopping right now. So I have an important task.
Yeah. That is going to be fun for me. Yeah, absolutely.
I
Yeah.
feel that way about going to the farmer's market right now. It's like social hour too. You get to like see everybody and you're
Yeah.
outside, and
Yeah.
every Saturday now is different because of the season.
Mhm.
But I feel like I definitely, in this chapter of my life, I can look back in my days in New York, and I like have a vivid memory of myself sitting at the kitchen table being like, when will this end? Like this like pace of life. Like I can't continue on like this. So I
Mhm.
look at myself then and now and think, wow, it's really different. Like I have learned a lot of balance and a way to do it. And
Mhm.
something that's been resonating with me recently is that like reduce, reuse, recycle sign of like I can put myself in that like the laundry has to be done, the bathroom needs to be cleaned, like all the things that need to be done. But I can also just like sit with my daughter in the morning and not worry about unloading the dishwasher, and that kind of stretches out time if
Yeah.
I allow it to, and gives me peace of mind to
Yeah.
tackle everything.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And we're going to talk about savoring in a second. And that's kind of what I mean by like soul care. Sometimes it's about savoring the moment, and that's what restores you. So we'll talk about that in a second. I'm making a couple notes of some things just to make sure that I talk about them in a minute.
Another thing that like Krista kind of brought up was she related it to her family where it was like, you can't have fun till all your chores are done. I see it also in like a societal thing where, it's kind of that hustle mentality, like, just keep going, keep doing, be the boss, do the things. Um, and then you almost feel bad for like, hold on, I need to like sit for a second.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. And so, again, the soul's most natural state is joy and contentment. So the whole idea is anytime we're not feeling that, it means our soul is like asking or even screaming for some sort of realignment. And it's just another way to start using that as a barometer to go, man, I am not having fun with this, or wow, this is not a fun situation. Not that you need to bolt and not take care of the situation, but it's that, oh, wait, this is my cue that something's misaligned and I need to bring this back into a state of joy or contentment. And and that's hard in the human condition. There are so many things that are stressors for us, and it's learning how to detach enough to create, that joy and contentment. I'm going to say this because I think um, it sounds, I don't know how it's going to sound. When I left the medical center as a professor, my thought was, I am never going to work in a place or work in a job that's not fun anymore, because it was hard and it wasn't fun I loved the creation part, the creation of the program. And I mean, I had a ball with that, and the materials I created for that were really cool. And I left them behind when I left. What wasn't fun was the dynamic there. It was the energy of being there and the energy of them not really appreciating the fact that I was doing what I was doing and that I was making the differences that I was making. But the thing is, it's unusual to be able to get into a place of a job where you actually just have fun. But that is where I urge people to strive for. Because the fact that if you can create the work that you do is fun, because that's where we spend the majority of our life, figuring out how to make this lighthearted, make it fun, make it creative, make it in the way that is going to align with you, it pays dividends. And it's just a matter of using that again as your barometer of, wow, if something's not fun, and I don't mean fun like, oh, Disney kind of fun. I mean, like, wow, this really feeds me. This is really nourishing to me. Then that's another way to start looking at, do I need to reassess? So that was one part I wanted to throw out there. I have a motto that I work hard and I play hard. I work hard. But I also know where my limit is and I know when to stop. And my weekends, for the most part, are off limits. Whether it's hanging out with friends, yucking it up, whether it's working in my yard, whatever it is, I think I have that awareness of work hard, play hard. And the other thing I want to throw in there is astrological personality makes a big difference. You wouldn't think so if you don't really know, but several of the astrological signs are are intense signs. So they have a hard time having fun, or they're so sensitive that they have a hard time having fun, or they're known to be kind of in the realm of the workaholics. And so you kind of have to also, and this is going to be in level 2, I'm really going to, pick through this for people to help them understand how personality plays a part in this too. So, we've got all these different soul level things that are happening that also make a difference in whether or not a person allows themselves to have fun or have leisure. That makes sense? Because there are levels of this that make a difference. So Capricorns and Virgos are the top 2 that tend to work a lot, because work is, for those 2, it tends to be the highest, I shouldn't say the highest, the most likely signs that would be like workaholics or be working a lot. Not all the time, because again, it depends on how the rest of your chart filters out. But so you have to kind of think about what else is there in that aspect. Okay, I know I just said a lot. Anything else that people want to say or ask?
I know I just keep talking. Sorry, guys. But one thing that, like, when you're saying that about like astrological signs, I'm a Pisces who's usually like daydreaming and, like no purpose. Um, but I find that as a Pisces, I'm very sensitive what other people say and think about me. And so I very much then have that mentality of trying to prove myself,
Trying
trying
to
to
please
prove,
and prove, yeah.
yeah. So even though I'm like the daydreamer, I'm also like, oh, I gotta succeed. I gotta do good.
Yeah.
Because people are gonna judge me and then I'll cry.
Right. Right. And so you work hard. Now, the other thing is Pisceans are usually very creative too. And so it's when you are creative, you have a hard time not creating. The other thing is, now this is later on into the star seed, when we start talking about star seeds, in how a soul is created and where it was created, sometimes a soul is literally created with an element, or what I call an ingredient, that is laced with creativity, that you have to be creating all the time. So, there's higher level ways to understand the soul, and that can create a lot of that dynamic of someone who works a lot versus plays a lot. So, but this is beyond astrological personality. This is literally how your soul is created, and you will always be like that because that's one of your key ingredients to who you are. So, there's there's lots of levels of this, which is really fun to understand. Yeah. Yeah. And someone who's got that creativity bug, excuse me, can't go without creating. And I have that. One of my divine ingredients is called divine creation. And so I don't feel well unless I'm creating something. And so to me, it's fun to create these courses, and it's fun to create the materials for these. And it's fun to create webinars, or, or a meal, or whatever it is that I'm creating. It doesn't matter as long as I'm creating. So part of it is understanding your soul from those deeper levels as well. Anybody else have something that they want to say about these things? What about the list of your beliefs about fun and leisure? Anything come up for you as you were writing those things down? Because I know, Krista, you already mentioned that you were kind of trained as a child to not look toward fun and leisure until your to-do list was done. You've got other thoughts?
I think it's really important to soul health. I think, I mean, and I am a Virgo, so I guess I'm very attuned to making sure I don't overwork, because, I mean, that would definitely be my tendency. But that was what I put, that I just think I think it's really important.
Mm-hmm. It's essential. I mean, really all of the branches are essential, but fun and leisure are absolutely ingredients to health. Absolutely. So we just got a message from Eleanor. They're both underrated and super necessary, but she's a Sagittarius, so duh. So, yeah, I'm a Sag, and so that's part of it too. And Sagittarians are very creative. Oops, uh-oh. Let me get back here. Sagittarians are very much about fun. Like, they need that as another ingredient in who they are. So fun and change. That's the other thing, is that some people like to do the same exact thing for fun over and over again, whereas other people like to do, I need variety. I can't do the same thing over and over again. So that's, again, you just have to start to get to know yourself in different ways. Okay.
I think I'm probably in a little bit of a unique situation from the rest in the group, as I'm retired now, but so I have a lot of time for fun and everything, but I spent my life in a very stressful, high gear career. I did have fun. I did travel. I did do a lot of things. One thing I didn't do very well, and I have worked very hard at it in this 5 years I've been retired, is keeping my tribe, having my friends, my girlfriends. I had work friends and I had work groups, but that's about all I had. I didn't have a lot of people in my group outside. And when I hear people my age starting to talk about, well, I can't retire, what would I do? I think, well, then you haven't done life right. I just don't understand this, because for me, fun reminds us to be alive. I mean, those that retire and die, I just don't feel like they're not having fun, probably, But that would be one thing. I've tried to talk to some of my girlfriends that are younger than me and said, stay close, find your group, find your people, so that there's something outside of work, because work goes away eventually, hopefully for everybody. But
yeah. Well, and sometimes, and I do think you make a good point that, we need playmates. We need people to hang with. And yet, this is where those 8.6 billion differences on this planet come in, that some people really have a lot of fun alone. I love, actually, I like traveling alone better than like traveling with people. Now that's opposite to a lot of people. I actually prefer traveling alone. And it's because I take care of people so much in my work time that I just want to kind of do my own thing. I don't want to be on a schedule. I don't want to, and so for me, it's a little bit different. Um, and another
And
thing, I'm sorry, go ahead.
sorry, and I agree because I don't, especially if it's a long period of time, more than a couple of days, I gotta get out of there with all these people. But I think you have a lot of friends too that you do a lot of things with, girlfriends, and that's where I miss the boat. I think was making strong, connected girlfriends that when life isn't going well, that I can call up and say, "Hey,
Yeah.
can you talk?" That kind of thing.
So, and this goes back to soul group and soul family is, I think a lot of mine comes from the fact that my family is pretty much gone. I had a large family, but I mean, most of them are deceased. And I have stragglers left. So, it is about like, again, everybody's a little different. And I will say this about retirement because my financial planner asked me like 10 or 12 years ago, oh, how old do you think you'll be when you retire? And I kind of looked at her and I said, well, I don't know that I'll ever retire because if I'm writing or speaking or creating courses or whatever, it's like if I'm having fun doing it, I'm probably going to keep doing it. And I said, and I live like I'm retired now. And she said, well, what do you mean? And I said, I work hard, I play hard, but I travel, I go do the things that I may not be able to do when I retire. That's where I budget my funds to go. And she just kind of looked at me and she's like, huh. And then like 3 or 4 months later, she starts traveling more because I don't think it really hit her that she shouldn't wait until the end. And so now she travels all over the world. It's kind of fun to watch. But I think this is how can you integrate more fun and leisure into your world now and not put it off? I want to mention this because I remember this was right before I moved here. Well, I take that back. This was when I was in graduate school. I was really stressed. I think I was probably at the end of the program, and I remember sitting in my car, my little Toyota Corolla that I had at the time, and I'm at a stoplight, and I'm like, oh God, how am I going to get through whatever? It was probably dissertation or something. And I'm sitting there, and I look at the car in front of me, and there's a purple bumper sticker, and all it said on it was, "Don't postpone joy." I remember that moment so clearly because I've always said that I was going to, write the first book on adult play, and yet I was still pretty playful and I still did a lot of fun things. But when I saw that bumper sticker, I'm like, yeah, I can't postpone joy. So make your own bumper sticker or sticky note or whatever so that you remind yourselves, even in the midst of hectic life or busyness or whatever, that joy is really basically postponing your soul. If you are postponing joy, you are postponing your soul. And that's not okay. And so that's where we have to, again, reconfigure or renegotiate those beliefs about when is it okay to have fun? When is it okay to, kick back and read a book or go stare at the stars or the leaves or whatever? I think we just have to learn how to balance that. And again, when we talk next week about self-love, I think this is going to get a little deeper and a little clearer for how to balance that out because it's that self-awareness of when you need that space for yourself that goes a long way in actually getting it. That makes sense? Okay.
So I have a question.
Sure.
I'm not playful, but I also don't postpone joy. So I'm not, so
So you said you're not
and
what? What was your
I'm
first
not
one?
playful. Like
Playful.
yeah, I'm not really playful or silly, but I don't postpone joy either.
What
So
would your friends say about that? Would your friends and your family say you're playful and joyful?
yeah, so that's the thing. I'm joyful, yes. Playful doesn't, playful doesn't really, I don't know. That just doesn't sound like something, it's never described me really, but definitely joyful.
Okay,
So
so a
I
couple
like, is
things.
that like, that feels like I don't know.
And I
It's
am
like I'm,
not pigeonholing you with when I say this, but Virgos tend to have a hard time having fun.
That would be
Because
accurate.
they tend to think they have to get through their to-do lists and they have to clean the house and they have to run to the bank and they need to go. So Virgos tend to have this level of responsibility that it's like the mindset does not include fun. But from what you said, you also love live music and you go to concerts and you hang out with your friends. And so maybe your definition of joy and fun maybe is a little bit different, or playfulness. Sorry, I want to look at this and make sure. Eleanor just said that Susan is very playful. So, so how we perceive ourselves may not be how other people perceive ourselves.
Fair.
So,
That's good. I mean, I am a helper by nature. So if I'm shedding joy and light, that's great. That's fine. I just would never describe myself as playful, but I definitely make it a point. It just feels like I'm kind of a conundrum. Like I make it a point to make sure I'm not missing the joy. But I mean, I don't really feel like I'm very playful, but okay. I guess the verdict's still
so
out.
maybe
No.
now it's time to have some conversations with your friends and family.
Okay. I know it's really hard to answer.
Yeah,
Well, like what I was doing a quiz and I'm like, well, I don't know. I know how some people would answer this, but
sure.
I don't know. I guess and it's good. I mean, as long as I'm feeling joy and spreading joy, I guess that's a good thing.
And that's the Virgo way to look at it because it's a task for you.
Oh yeah, right. Exactly. I
Yeah.
just I walked right into that one.
It's a
Okay.
task. It's a task. Yeah. My
Okay,
best friend
check.
has like 5 Virgos in her chart. So, it's very interesting to try to get her to take time off or have, do something that's fun. Although we have so much fun when we're together. So it's like one of those things. So, okay.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
maybe she and I really understand each other then. All right. Well,
probably.
thank you.
Yeah. And most of the accountants and money crunchers in her department are Virgos. It's very interesting. Yeah.
Well, but I definitely I don't fit the money cruncher part of that. I don't enjoy that piece of the Virgo. So
It,
that one I didn't get, but
it's really
which is
more
good.
the
I can't be.
organizational part.
I
Virgos
do
like
love
to.
I do love a good organization. And I would say getting something organized would be fun. So here I'm just really just
Yeah.
teeing it up
Depends
for
on
you.
what you're organizing. Yeah. So, okay. So we're going to go on to the next slide, but this is really fruitful. And I think this is important for you to kind of spin through and really obviously dig into a little bit. So I'm going to go on to this next one. Do you have any thoughts or questions or comments about how, or reactions about when you filled this out for yourself? Because we've already talked a lot about some of this, but was there anything else that triggered for you? Okay, because we've already talked a lot about this. Okay, we're going to go to the next slide here. So, want you to kind of think back. We're just going to stick on this slide for just a minute because fun changes over time. So think a minute for your favorite fun memory as a child. What were you doing? What was happening? What was fun and playful about it? And I will say one of the things that came up for me when I'm going to share 2 memories that, I was the youngest of 5, but the oldest soul pretty much. So I remember, well, I remember lots of memories. 2 of my favorite memories are that my dad, to get us out of my mom's hair, once in a while, and I don't know how often, but it was fairly often. We would either go to the dollar bread store or however much it cost at the time, probably not $1, buy a bunch of bread and go feed the ducks at this city park. And he would let us run amok. He'd let us feed these ducks. He would just he'd take us for snow cones. It was basically our day out with Dad, but it was basically to get us out of my mom's hair. So that was probably her fun day, was to get away from us. But I remember that, and I also remember he and I was always, again, the one in the kitchen, and if it wasn't bread, it was when those air poppers came out, and we would pop literally a huge trash bag full of popcorn to take to feed the ducks. And it was just as much fun for me to help him make the popcorn as it was for me to throw it out there to the ducks. I just remember it. And I was probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old. We didn't have a lot of time with my dad because he was working and busy until basically his accident. So that was a memory. The other memory that came up for me was that my older two siblings, my sister who's 3 years older, and my brother who is deceased now but was 4 years older. The three of us would take one of those really old recorders, and it was like not even the cassette, it's the older version of the recorder where you literally saw the film going through, the player. And we would record commercials. We would make up our own jingles and we would record commercials. And I don't know how we came up with this idea for Soapy Suds, but that was the name of one of our products. And we did this whole series of Soapy Suds commercials. And it was so fun. And those are probably my best memories of my upbringing with them, is that I just remember some of those things that were so playful for the sake of doing them. There was no reason to do them. The reason I'm bringing that up is then when you look at this list is start to think about what did you do? We're going to do the timeline. So what did you do for fun before the age of 10? And then what did you do for fun between the ages of 11 and 15? And then you bump it up to 16 to 20. And then you start going into your 20s and your 30s and your 40s and your 50s. One of the things I would encourage you to do is go back to that first module where we talked about the soul path and just start to look at the timeline and the evolution of what was fun for you. And start to realize, wow, is there any of that I can resurrect? Is there any of that I have bad memories about now? But I think part of it is to really look at your soul path and see what the evolution of fun was for you, because that will change. And I think about, for me, again, at age 9, fun left the household. So I was kind of on my own to make fun, which is basically when I think that's why my best friend and I resonated, because her sister died 9 months before my dad died when I was 21. But on the volleyball team, we had fun. And that's how I met her. And so, I mean, we made fun because it was the thing to do. It was like the place that we could have fun and be safe. And I mean, emotionally safe. And so that's the other thing I want to encourage you to think about is, were you emotionally safe in creating fun for yourself? Because that will add a layer for you, for yourselves, as well as when you're helping others, to help them understand, okay, how did these beliefs or fears or discomforts about fun and leisure get created? And can you peel back any of those layers of the not so fun, or the layers that were not so safe and comfortable? I think that's just another angle to doing the soul healing work. Check the time real quick here. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next one. If I can get this. I'm trying really hard to do this slowly so I don't mess up those were supposed to wiggle. I don't know if you can see it wiggling, but I had these all on animation. I'm not sure why the animation isn't working. Oh, wait a minute. There we go. Okay. So how has fun for you changed as you have aged? Now, again, this goes back to that previous question, but what do you do to laugh? Like, what do you do to laugh? Who do you laugh with most? Who are your playmates or your partners? How can you, like, again, like Yetta said, how can you start to maybe enhance this? How can you start to create more? Because when you have your little sandbox partners that you can call in, it does go a long way for just easing your soul. So anybody want to answer this question? Do you let yourself play?
I found that, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
So I have found that I'm actually starting to come back around to the things that I really enjoyed as a kid. So I think there's a lot of time just you have like little kids, and my youngest is 6, so obviously he's still little, but the older he gets, the more I feel like I can explore more and be more intentional about the things that I want to do. So I used to ride horses for hours, and I started riding every other week. And last night, I was so excited. I have a few things to say about this, but I actually went line dancing. So I used to country dance when I was younger.
Yeah.
And I realized how much I miss dancing. And I haven't gone in a long time because I think there is this, my husband does not like to dance. And I think that there is this level of, well, like, should I go without him? What does that look like?
Yes.
When you're horse riding or you're doing, and he goes bowling. So I do want to say he goes bowling once a week. So he has kind of found his own thing. Um, but I felt like I wasn't really sure how I felt about going dancing or going out without him. And so I had talked to him and said, "Hey, would you like to join?" And he said he would not. So I said, "Well, I'm still going."
Good. Yeah.
So I went out and I actually took my kids. I met with some friends, and she had brought her kids. I don't know if I would take them every time, but it was a family event, and I do it every Monday, where it's in this old theater, and the kids and I just had so much fun laughing and being silly. And so then I just took them out for ice cream after and told them that I appreciated them trying something new. This is, and got to kind of tell them why this is important to me, and how that this is how I grew up. I grew up dancing, and I grew up with that kind of culture. So I found that I also found joy getting to share it with them as well as my friends.
Yeah. Yeah. So your sandbox playmates could be friends and family. I mean, it could be anybody. So I think we go through chapters in our life of who we spend time with as fun partners. So I think that's good. Yeah. Good. What about others as far as letting yourself play?
I find when I'm with my daughter, I do the most play. Um, and she's not a kid anymore. She's 19, but um, we we just both of us get really silly together. We do silly things and we giggle and laugh and drive my wife crazy because she calls us clowns. She's like, "There's the clowns."
Clowns can be good, not scary.
Yeah, no, it's not scary. Just because everything is fun when we're together.
Yeah.
So that's part of like the partner part. Like
Wonderful.
me and my daughter, we click really well with uh, playtime.
Mhm. Wonderful. Yeah, and I think that's it. And sometimes again, like you said, sometimes it needs to be with someone. And the other thing is, I think even if you didn't know a soul, Jen, and you wanted to go line dancing, go line dancing if it's fun for you. I have a 67 or 68-year-old client who loves to dance. And so she will go to wineries when they know she didn't even hardly drink, but she goes when they have bands, and then she just stands up and dances all by herself if she wants to. And so, I think part of it is figuring out what is fun, what is fun for you, and what you can do to let yourself play. So that's wonderful. Yeah. Does anybody have a hard time giving themselves permission to play?
I was just going to say one of the things that I think I'm still learning to do is notice, like, in the middle of the day, if I have just like 10 or 15 minutes, like noticing that I can take that 10 or 15 minutes, and then what can I do fun for 10 or 15 minutes?
Yep.
So, if my daughter's home, I might walk in there to pick on her for a minute, or do something silly to get her to laugh. That always makes me laugh. Or if she's not home, or if I just have here in my office, sometimes I'll just watch a couple videos of my favorite comedian, or, look for, dark humor kind of memes, like just anything to just, that I get, because my sense of humor is weird. And so, but that's the kind of things that I try to do now some during the day just to kind of make my day a little bit more enjoyable. So that's what I'm always trying to figure out is, okay, based off my schedule, because I don't like having to live by one, but I got so many things between two jobs and parenting and all this stuff. Okay, I have like a little bit of time here. And then so what can I plug in there?
Right.
Whereas before, I think I would say, oh, good, I can finish reading that whatever for work,
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
think for me, that's growth for sure.
Absolutely.
But I also think, when I think back about ages, I think the more I know myself, what is fun has changed.
Absolutely. And it should, but that's why I'm even asking the questions is so people can go, oh, okay, how have I evolved and changed? I will say, I didn't grow up near either one of the Disneys. And the birthday after my mom passed away in 2015, my best friend she's like, we need to go somewhere. Where are we going to go? And she knows me enough to know that I get away and I decompress. And she said, let's go to Disney. And I'm like, really? And for me, I'm like, I wasn't sure it would be fun. And so we basically, we scheduled, I think, 3 or 4 days, and she planned it, and it was fun. And what was really interesting about it is I could not believe how much fun I had. It was one of those things where I don't know, and I was 45 years old. It was the first time I'd been to Disney. She was 46 years old at the time. And we had so much fun. We tried on hats, we did rides, we did all this kind of stuff we wouldn't have done earlier. And that is exactly why Disney exists, is to forget the world. And so it's expensive, but it's worth the investment. And like I said, I was very impressed and surprised with how much fun it was. In the first time, I don't know how many of you know of the movie Avatar. It's a beautiful, I think, movie if you really look at the meaning behind it. But the Disney in Florida has an Avatar area in the animal kingdom. And I wanted to ride the Banshee ride because the Banshee is basically, for those of you who remember, it's basically the big flying creatures that you bond with. And we got in to do this ride, and I giggled through the entire thing because I knew the movie and I've always had flying dreams. I mean, I started out very young having flying dreams, and it was the best feeling in the world. So I think part of it is giving yourself permission, but also getting kind of out of the box of what you think fun might be and allowing yourself to try things, because, this is that whole idea of, I think we forget over time what play is. And, this whole age thing changes what we think is fun. At 45, I would have never thought that I would have enjoyed Disney. We actually went back to Disney like 2 or 3 years after that, because we went to a Pink concert in Tampa, and we went back to Disney. And then we went a third time 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago. So not that I'll keep going, but it is one of those things where sometimes you have to find your niche of what fun is for you. So thinking about who do you laugh with most, again, who are your play partners, I would just spend time, again, trying to figure out, okay, how do I start incorporating fun and leisure into my life more? And then, okay, so let's talk about, how do people use fun to avoid healthy living? Because this is the flip side. So fun can definitely be used to avoid our growth and evolution. Are you aware of things, either for yourself or other people, that is actually getting in the way of their soul health, but they think is fun? Now, one thing I will say that has grown over the years is people playing hours upon hours upon hours of video games. That concerns me, because a lot of the video games that are out there are very violent, and it's like that whole junk in, junk out thing of, if you're bringing in a lot of murder and killing and shooting and all of that, it's like, what kind of energy are you lacing your system with? But oftentimes, a lot of people use things like that to avoid doing life. And that, again, is not for soul health, but it's one of those things that I think is rampant right now. But I think there's other ways to avoid, to use fun to avoid, health and healthy living. Any other thoughts on that? Because I also say yet a work and all play, or all work and no play is detrimental. So how do you learn to balance some of this? I'm not at all saying some video games are bad. It's the type of video games and the length that people are playing. I think that can be challenging. Okay, so.
And I always, what falls into this is the alcohol.
Yep.
Like I remember when I was in my 20s, if there wasn't alcohol, it wasn't fun.
Mm-hmm.
Everything we did with my friends revolved around drinking. And to not have the alcohol would have been boring. We would have thought, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But really, it's
So
it's not true
alcohol,
fun.
drugs, a lot of these things, we didn't have the kind of drugs around that we have when I was a kid that we have now. So yeah, I think alcohol and drugs definitely. Microdosing is huge right now. Doing trips for psychedelics is huge right now. Again, I think there has to be a balance to some of these things. And I think Sherry, you bring up a good point. Is that our high school class was known as the drinking crowd. We were the party crowd. And yet I was I was often more the designated driver than anything because I don't like getting sick. And I just didn't understand how people could party till they puked and then keep drinking again. I just didn't understand it. But, I think, like you said, it was what they did for fun.
What we thought was fun at that time.
Right. Yeah.
Sherry, I thought the same thing on the last slide where, between 11 and 15, that was like the start of it for me was the alcohol part. And I know that's really young, but that's when alcohol was introduced into my life. And then I was looking, I'm like, okay, and then 16 to whatever, yep, alcohol. And then 20s, alcohol, 30s, alcohol. I was like, good God. Like, is that all I did was drink and have sex? Like, what?
Yeah. When I think about my childhood, so my parents were very young. So mum had me when she was 17. So they were in their 20s doing a lot, and they were very big social drinkers while I was, growing up till 10, 11, 12. So that's what I saw as having fun.
Mm-hmm.
Having all your friends around, having the beers and the wines and the music going. And that's what I sort of grew up with as seeing them have fun. But that's what adults do. Mm.
Oh my gosh, you just brought back some memories for me. My granny had a large, it used to be a kitchen for the army, but they moved it onto our property. And so it was like this big garage, and then it had a kitchen area. And she would have potluck parties, and she was in a country western band. So they would set up for the music and everyone would bring the food. Then there's a whole wall of alcohol. And it was just it was huge. Like, I don't know how many times we had the cops called on us, but and it was just for noise, not because we were out of control. But you're right, Sherry, like that was my introduction to what is fun. And that was what I saw my parents and my family do for fun.
So you do what you know, and sometimes we have to unlearn that that's not the primary form of fun for sure. Yeah. And see, my parents were the opposite. I mean, mine were older. My mom was 40 when she had me, and my dad was almost 46. So they weren't super, fun. And then my dad had his accident. So again, I think this is where this is, okay, how do you relearn? How do you reinstill a sense of joy and fun and contentment in your life in a way that aligns, basically. So, we can avoid healthy living through all kinds of forms of fun. How do you balance it? How do you have some fun at the same time of, being responsible and this whole idea of adulting? Also, a lot of people use some form of fun or activity of fun to resist change. that they don't really want to resist, or they don't really want to evolve and change. And so, that's that fun, it becomes the object of their avoidance. And then the other thing, as far as, mistaking creature comforts for self-love or self-care. This is a big part of, a lot of times, we think that food is fun. And what about overeating? What about, binging? What about those kinds of things? So we have to kind of play around with, okay, how do we get to know ourselves in a whole different way so that we can get there? I forgot that this was going to jump out at us. Okay. I don't know why my animations aren't fully working. So, all right. So I was going to do a journey, but I know we're not going to have a ton of time. So I'm actually going to save this for either next week, or I'll save it for, because we're going to be doing a lot of work about self-love next week. And that goes right in with self-love, with joy, and learning how to have that joy and contentment. To me, they come together, because again, as we're going to talk a lot, is that sense of joy and contentment really is about soul health. So how do we integrate joyful living so that we can actually get to that point of expanding who we are as souls in general? I want to talk a little bit about the idea of savoring, and I'm going to get myself out of this and stop sharing. Okay, I want to talk about the idea of savoring. Now, one of the videos that I added at the end, of this module was a video that I did for my newsletter. And I wanted to add it because of that whole idea of savoring. And when we think about savoring something, we almost immediately think about food. We think about, oh, wow, this piece of, or this eclair is just so tasty. And we sit with that for those few moments. Or we sit with, I don't know, pasta, or, spaghetti and meatballs, or whatever it was that was like your favorite food as a kid. It's like, oh, you savor it when you taste it because it brings back that energy and those memories about it. So the idea of savoring to me is all about fun and joy and contentment. When you start to think about that, you think about, okay, if I savored something, then you feed your soul, you enhance kind of who you are, and you bring in the energy of that moment. And that actually restores us much faster than a lot of other self-care kinds of activities. So even when I'm working with people to do emotional eating work, I talk to them about the 3-bite rule. And the 3-bite rule is that the first one is the one you're really looking for. That's the one you savor the most. That's the one you really taste. By the second one, you're really not tasting it nearly as much. It's about 50% of it. By the third one, you're really not even tasting the food, you're just eating. So I try to encourage people, how do you learn to savor everything, not just food? So when you think about your favorite activity that you're going to be able to do today or tonight, what would that be? What is it that you can savor tonight and bring that energy in for you?
I like to savor being, we live on a creek in the Chesapeake Bay area, and we have a dock, and there's a wrought iron table there. And I bring a tray down and with our dinner at night, almost every night in the decent weather, if it's not raining or something. And we sit down there without phones or entertainment, and we just savor this incredible marsh. We watch the great herons and the osprey and the fish flipping up, and ducks and geese and birds of all kinds. And it's just so much fun. Just sit there and just take it all in. It's so peaceful and so relaxing, especially after a day of work, but even anyway, anytime.
Yeah.
So I feel like I can savor that.
Yeah. And multi dimensions of it, which is just wonderful. So it's not even just
sounds
bird.
and
It's like
yeah.
it's
And you can hear all the different bird sounds, and they all sound completely different. And then you can sometimes hear an owl or a frog or, other things as well. So,
I love it. I love it. Yeah, thank you. Okay, what about others?
Very similar. The fireflies, or the lightning bugs, as we like to say here, are out now, and it's like a lava lamp almost right now. They're just like coming up from the ground, and
Yeah.
it's miraculous. So I've mosquito bites all over my legs because I've been going out at night on the deck and just savoring it. I can't take myself away. It's amazing.
Yeah. Lemongrass is really good for that. Lemongrass lotion might keep them away. Yeah. Yeah, wonderful. I will jump in here. My hummingbird feeder fell and broke yesterday, like right when I started seeing clients at like 8:05 a.m. And I was horrified because they're back because I thank goodness for mail order kinds of things. But my hummingbirds were coming all day, like, where is our food? And it was driving me crazy because it's my thing. It's my thing that ever since before COVID. And so it arrived at about 11 o'clock today and it was up by noon and they have been feeding ever since. And when I just have a moment to pause, one was just here, when I have a moment to pause and just savor the fact that that bird is savoring their food that I'm providing, there's like a double savor. There's like a double energy to that, knowing I provided that, but knowing that, oh, these adorable little 2-inch creatures can bring so much. So for me, again, I look for things to savor. I mean, I very much look for things to savor. So what about others? What is something that you either recently or you can savor tonight?
My time is always in the morning. I'm more productive in the morning anyway. But I'm also the one that gets up and no one's up for hours sometimes. And I savor that moment. I get my mushroom coffee ready and I set my cards out and my journal and I put music on in my ear and I just it's my time.
Perfect.
And I probably only spend about 30 minutes maybe
Mhm.
in that task, but I can take my time with it because no one else is up, no one's asking me to do anything else. And I just mentioned to my wife that that is my thing. And now she knows, like, even if I do it later and she's already up, that that's my thing. You do your cards, and when you're done, then we can do whatever.
When you're done
But
savoring.
yes, when I'm done savoring.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. So I want to throw this out there because this is your assignment for next week. One of your assignments is I want you to start paying attention to what you can savor more because, and again, I'm not telling you to go look at the recipe for radiance videos now, but I really I really push the idea of soul care versus self-care because soul care is mostly about savoring. It's mostly about, okay, what can I bring into my energetic being right now that I know will restore me? And those little dang hummingbirds, I have them all named, by the way. The one that was here was Lily Long Neck. She has a very long neck, and they come back every year. So I have my little sticky note with their names on them. But it's that whole idea of, okay, how can you figure out your list of what you can savor that doesn't take a lot of money, doesn't take a lot of time, doesn't take a lot of space? Or effort, because that's to me what soul care is all about. Now, when we talk next week about self-love, you're going to understand this hopefully even more, because if you think about savoring, it's the energy of it. Again, we've talked a lot about energy. When we talk about self-love, it's all about the energy of tuning in with that. I call it the sweet spot of the soul. And I'm going to walk you through some things next time, kind of more of a journey to get you in touch with that sweet spot. We're actually also going to talk during the next half day intensive. I'm actually going to be taking you on a lot more journeys to be able to get to this point where you're like really tuning into that space. But for next week, I want you to start to really pay attention to what you can savor differently, even if there's not something you're savoring now, but you're like, wait a minute, I'm going to tune in on that leaf on that tree, and I'm just going to savor that leaf. If you do happen to have something really delicious over the next week, just emotionally and physically savor it. So it's that whole idea of tuning in with that, because when we learn what it is that feeds us at that deep level, that is the soul. That is basically the soul speaking. So, play with that, experiment with that, see what you can create as your fun and leisure list that you might not already know about, and we'll go from there. Any thoughts, questions, comments? I have a feeling I will be savoring a thunderstorm very soon because it's getting very dark here. So, all right. All right. Have a wonderful week. Thank you, thank you, thank you for a wonderful conversation, and I'll see you next week.
Bye. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.